Welcome to the show. After the kids go to bed, we talk about love, relationships, and sex. So join us for lively discussion and thought provoking ideas at Love is on the Air. My name is David, and I'm joined by my lovely wife, Natalie, contributor and chief over at the Feminine Frame website. Okay, let's do it.
All right.
All right, so tonight's topic comes from Reddit, and it comes from a subreddit called Cheating Stories. It says, I cheated on my wife, male, 34. My wife and I have been married for 8 years, and I have a 4-year-old kid. We dated each other since college days. I am a person with high libido, or a horny dog as some people like to call it. However, our sex life is next to non-existent. I don't remember the last time we had sex. She is always busy in the kitchen and kid. Sometimes we do get time, but I'm not in the mood because of a lot of arguments we had earlier that day. She is naggy and has a habit of arguing on all the small stupid things. Our relationship is not ideal, happy relationship. Despite that, she is the same woman I loved. I care for her, I respect her, and always nice to her. After all, she is the pillar of my family. Getting separated is not an option for us either. Getting separated is not an option for either of us. I was texting my acquaintance who is married as well, but husband lives overseas at the moment. We met for a quick meet and greet at the local mall. Next week, she invited me to her place to hang out with her son. We didn't talk about sex yet. I took a bottle of wine, which we finished, and the moment her son took his afternoon nap, we had some great sex, as we were both really hungry to get laid. At first, I felt really bad. The guilt was really heavy and was eating me up inside. But then I couldn't stop thinking about the sex, and I started feeling better and happy. I am confessing that I don't feel bad about it anymore. In fact, I am happy and planning next date with the same woman.
All right.
So our little author here is well. Let me get what's your first reaction to this story, Natalie?
My first reaction is he brought a bottle of wine. He knew what he was getting into. This isn't something that he accidentally fell into. There was some intention there going into it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. He went over there. Okay, so apparently she's away. Her husband's away on business, right? And he's going over to her house alone. So yeah, he definitely went over there with
and they didn't meet in a public place. Sometimes these affairs start, a little bit more innocently or with less intention. It's we're just friends. We're your husband's away, so we feel like you're lonely. We want to include you. Let's, go out to lunch somewhere. And then, you start relying on each other emotionally. No, they were just planning to get together from the get-go, I think. They met up at her house, brought the wine.
Well, we know it's pretty clear to me that his intentions were he was going to go have sex with this woman. But do you think her intentions were also that? When they planned to meet up, do you think she's like, yep, this is happening?
I mean, if not, that was very foolish and naive of her to invite a man to her home rather than a public place, someplace, I think that was very foolish.
It's possible that she was deluding herself too, right? She's like, oh, I'm just having a friend over.
Right, and that's why
a man without his wife, I'm going to invite him over. It's totally harmless fun. I think sometimes people have a way of deluding themselves as to the real situation so that later on they can justify it and not feel so bad. They're like, it started innocently enough and one thing led to another. It's like, Yeah, but if you really are introspective, I think she knew too.
I
what
think
was
she, I
going
think
on.
she knew. Um, at best, she was a little foolish and naive. But I think in the back of her mind, maybe she was lying to herself or trying to, shove that nagging little
Yeah.
voice away. But they both knew what they were getting into, I think.
So there's an edit here. So after some comments came in, he wrote an edit. So let's read that
let's
now.
hear that.
For all the women saying that I am a piece of, here is a pro tip coming from a married man who married his college sweetheart and never touched any other woman past 16 years. Did I ever thought I'd cheat on my wife? Even thinking that was blasphemy for me. You can call me a bad person, which I know I am after this, or you can help your man not cheat on you by taking care of his needs and stop being naggy wife. Your thoughts?
I think that he is trying very hard to justify this. Why go on to Reddit and make a post except for to, soothe his guilt? And then when he doesn't get that, then he comes out, defending himself. So I think there's definitely some, he's trying to kind of protect his ego here and stuff. But I think that deep down there's still a little guilt and shame over what he's done.
Yeah, I mean, that edit to me it seems like he's projecting his infidelity on the obvious criticisms that are coming into him. So I guess all the women in the comments calling him a piece of shit, like he goes, well, instead of doing this, why don't you do that? Almost like they're a surrogate for his actual wife. Like he's using them as a surrogate for her. And so, that's something that he probably wants to say to his wife, but isn't. So he's projecting onto random women on the internet.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on this, where he probably was looking for some validation. He put all the reasons up front why he did it, and he probably didn't get that validation that he wanted.
Clearly.
So yeah, I think that's true. Now the other thing is, so he says, you can call me a bad person, which I know I am after this. So what do you think of that?
I mean, I think he's still deflecting a little bit. I don't know. It's hard to tell tone, but I guess it just seems like a little dismissive. You can call me a bad person, whatever. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, he says, I know I am, right?
Yeah, well, so and he does feel that shame, and he's still looking for validation, even if it comes from himself.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. He's still looking for validation. Yeah, I think that's right. I think, he's saying, on the one hand, he's saying, I did this because XYZ. She was naggy, she was this, she was that.
Yeah, somebody please tell me it was her fault and not mine. Yeah. And then that way I can alleviate all these feelings that I'm feeling and then just go unhappily cheating, I think.
Yeah. And on the one hand, he wants the validation. The other hand, he wants, almost like he wants forgiveness, like a confessional. He wants to confess to get not just validation, but forgiveness. And when he says, oh, I know I'm a bad person for this, it's almost like if he says that, he'll feel better about it. Yeah. I don't think he will. I think he won't feel better about this. But right now, the position he's in, he's already had the affair, and so he doesn't probably see it, the harm in continuing it.
Right. Well, he said, I'm planning to see her again. I am planning to do this again.
Right. So there's no real penance there, but
yeah.
So let me ask you this: do you think that he's POS, self-described POS?
I don't know. I mean, he obviously feels some sort of, remorse over it that he's battling very hard to shove aside and to place blame on her. But I mean, he obviously feels something. So, he's not a complete psychopath. But maybe that makes it worse, is that he feels something and that he's saying, I'm going to continue to do this. So maybe he needs to introspect a little bit there.
Well, I don't think he's a bad person, even though he says he's a POS. I mean, from what it sounds like, he's been with her for 8 years, and they have a son that they love, and that leaving the marriage would never be an option for him because of, well, he doesn't explicitly say for the son, but it's just getting separated is not an option for either of us. He says, I love her, I care for her, I respect her, I'm always nice to her. She is the pillar of my family. So someone who talks about their spouse that way, like what I get the sense that he's actually a good person who has, well, probably bluntly is sabotaging his marriage. So yeah, I don't think he's a bad person, but like you were saying, I do think he needs to be a little more introspective.
Yeah, a little bit more honest with himself, I think.
Like, if he does love her and does care for her, then, it behooves him, I would say, to want to work out the marriage with her. Because that's what he says. Taking this at face value.
Right.
If he does love her, respect her, is always nice to her, he's just not getting the sex that he feels like he needs, then yeah, probably the way forward for him is to look inside and say, hey, do I really value this marriage? And if not, do we stay together just for the child in spite of this being a sexless marriage?
Right. And maybe there's some other reasons that he's not saying. Maybe there's some cultural or religious things at play, or maybe there's some financial,
They're too broke to get divorced.
They're too broke to get divorced, or, I mean, there's lots of reasons that people, want to stay together even if they're not romantically linked anymore.
Yeah, you're right. There could be more beneath the surface we're not really digging into.
Okay.
So my philosophy of men and stoicism in general isn't that men don't have emotions and feelings, but they are better served by not throwing them wildly to the wind. So he says in here that he argues with his wife all the time, and that's why he's never in the mood for sex. So yes, children can absolutely dampen a sex life, but I think couples in healthy relationships,
they find a way.
They find a way. But for him, absolutely, women do tend to get emotional. We all know this. I mean, it's just natural. There's nothing wrong with that. But when she brings a high emotionality to, in this case, into their arguments, I think he would be so much better served by eliminating the emotions in it. Not that he's not feeling upset or angry or mad or anxious or whatever that he's feeling, but if she's bringing this really high energy level of negative energy, he would be better served to suppress that outward signs of his emotion and just be able to talk about his issues cool and collected. And if his wife in this moment is too emotional to talk about it, she's too upset, she's too mad, she's too tired, whatever the reason is, if she's too emotional, then for him he'd be far better just to kind of almost say it in a deadpan voice, like yes, no, very matter-of-factly, like he's at a DMV or something, just doing it, because if he tries to match her emotional energy, then they're really going to fight. So he'd be better off to go back to the issue later and say, okay, now that we've both cooled off a little bit, I'm ready to talk about it. And he can explain kind of logically where he's coming from. But I think for men that bring up the energy level and they surpass her, then you just get in this like argument, who's got more emotional energy. And then, he says, well, you don't do this. And then she's like, well, you did this 5 years ago and I'll never forget that. And, they just kind of try to one up each other. But if you don't play that game, you can't win that prize,
Yeah.
So I think one thing that he could do is really discuss, like, to avoid those arguments. Like, you really don't have to get in an argument. You can have a discussion. You do love her, right? If you love her, then talk to her like she's an adult, not like an emotional child, even if she's screaming at you.
Like an emotional child.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be the adult. And when she calms down, then talk to her.
Yeah.
And my miscategorizing is my assessment of that situation.
No, I agree with that. I guess here's kind of my thoughts. I guess number one, we know that this man is not very good at introspection. So I would say number one, he says that she nags him a lot. So is she just kind of picking a fight for attention and to see what he's going to do? Or is he really kind of not pulling his weight and kind of slacking? And I can't answer that. I have no idea. So that's something that hypothetically, if this man were listening, that he would have to be very honest with himself about. And then the other thing to be aware of is that sometimes women kind of on a subconscious level do like to test, the mettle of their man to see, what he's made of. So it could be that she is, just picking fights. Not
see where he'll put his foot down.
Where he's going to put his foot down. She's like a child. She's testing his boundaries, and he's moving the goalpost. If he's falling for this bait and getting into the argument, then she knows that she can push his boundaries further and further and further.
Right.
So that's kind of thought one. And thought two is sometimes women also pick fights on a subconscious level because they are needing attention from their man. So, maybe he does need to validate her or comfort her. And obviously this man, she might be able to sense that she's losing him a little bit and that his eyes are wandering, and she would be correct in that assessment if she is feeling that. And so she might be picking these fights to get some comfort from him and some validation herself. He's seeking validation here on Reddit. She might be seeking validation from him, like, hey, I still love you. I'm still attracted to you. Even though I'm not getting enough sex, it's all good. We're good. I still love you. And that might not be the case. They might not be good, but she might still be looking for that validation. So I have no idea what's going on in her mind.
He does mention that she's in the kitchen all the time. Now, do you think when he says that she's in the kitchen cooking food for him and the child? Is she like a 4-star Michelin chef or something if she's cooking all the time? Or do you think she's in the kitchen on her phone reading Reddit/cheating stories?
She is reading this. She has definitely looked through his internet history. No, just kidding. I have no idea.
I think she's probably, distancing herself from him. I mean, yes, there is a lot of time that you'll spend in the kitchen if you cook for the family, but, at the same time, if you're spending all your time there, I'm guessing that she's, reading or has a phone or blog or watching YouTube video or something. She's got to be doing something in there to distract herself from the unpleasantries of life.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, like this is a lot of conjecture. I mean, it could be
But
that
I don't think she's cooking for him.
I mean, it could be that she's bad at time management, and hypothetically, she could be, have dinner in the oven by the time he gets home from work. But maybe she's really not got her time management down, and so she's not starting to cook dinner until she gets home because she's like, oh, husband can watch the child. And so now I'm not distracted by the child and I can go cook. And then does he clean up the dishes? Maybe she's spending an hour after they eat cleaning up. And so maybe there's, 2 hours after he gets home that she is legitimately in the kitchen.
I mean, maybe.
I don't know.
It doesn't seem likely to me. But, my advice, if I could meet this man and talk to him, I'd say, well, if she's in the kitchen all the time, go there. I think he's really not getting his needs, he's expressing this desire that she's not paying enough attention to him. And that can happen in a marriage with children, especially where you're not spending as much time on your partner as before you had kids.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not getting his emotional needs met. But my guess is that he's not in the kitchen hanging out with her. He's probably gone in his office or wherever, and he's reading Reddit, or he's
typing this.
He's in there writing this post, or worse, going to this girl's house, this woman's house. So yeah, he's. But that's the thing is, like, if he wanted to, really, he could spend more time with her. You just have to go where she is. If he went in the dishes or went in the kitchen and did dishes, after dinner, that would take 45 minutes, half hour. I don't know how much to clean after dinner. I've never done it before. But
you're welcome.
But no, I'm just joking. But he could spend time with her that way too. He could go in the kitchen, and then for that 30 minutes they're cleaning up, talk to her, spend time with her. Not all, emotional bonding time has to be on a date, or, it's easy to think that that's the only time and place that you can spend time together that have meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into a couple of comments here.
All right.
Let's see what they say in here.
Okay.
The first comment with 50 upvotes. Why not divorce the wife since you don't care about her? She's going to find out and you're going to lose it all. Good luck with that. You might get away with it for now. Lol. Yeah. Oh, and then there's another one. In regards to your edit, how fucking dare you blame her for not taking care of your needs? Man, this is a lot of F-bombs in this one. Have a wank and discuss your partner how you feel and try to fix something, you blank twat. Getting desperate isn't an option. Getting separated isn't an option. Yes, it blank is and her option decision whether she wants you a part of her life after blank someone else. Single moms can survive without the big man working. If you even call yourself a man, you're the reason some males get a bad rap. And to be honest, I don't blame women after dealing with pricks like yourself. Maybe ask her why she doesn't want to have sex. I didn't blame her for the way you think. Crazy, I know. So what do you think? I think some of these women are...
They're also projecting a little bit. Maybe they've been cheated on before.
One of the things he said in there is that divorce isn't an option. And I kind of want to know your thoughts on this. Is divorce something that should be on the table after an infidelity like this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you go into marriage, there is, I think most people would agree that there is an expectation of fidelity. That's one of the main things that you promise, unless if you have explicitly stated otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, most normal
Yes.
weddings are that.
Yeah, so there's this expectation of fidelity.
Right.
So I think that is a reason that somebody could get divorced.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a reason there to do it. But, all these people in the comments that are just spewing vitriol at this guy, I think they're projecting their own insecurities on him. Like, just calling him a POS isn't really going to help him or his spouse. I think they're kind of projecting their own insecurities about their relationships onto him. Like, how outrageous, how dare you, she said, how dare you? It's like, well, I mean, you're talking about a loveless, sexless marriage.
I mean,
So
maybe or maybe not
that
loveless,
big
but
of a-
sexless. Yeah.
I mean, maybe not loveless, but sexless marriage. Is it really that far of a stretch that, that infidelity would happen? I'm not justifying it, of course, but to not expect it to happen, I mean, how long do you have to go without sex before you think your spouse will want to get it elsewhere,
Right.
Especially men. I mean, he's self-described horny dog, so.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I don't know if he said in the post. That's one thing I would be curious if he said we're not having sex. How long have they not been having sex? Have they not had sex for 6 months? Have they not had sex for 3 days and he wants it twice a day? Like what kind of are the expectations there between them?
Yeah, and my guess is they probably never discussed, what the expectations were. And not that those can't change over time. As we age, libido drops, of course. As you have children, libido drops. But yeah, you're right. There's probably never been a conversation about how often he expects it. And then the other thing, too, is even if you're having sex can be good or bad. Actually, the joke is that it's like sex is kind of like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Yeah. And I mean, he said that, did he say that he met her in like high school and stuff?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for him,
No, I think he said that.
Like in the edit, he said something.
College sweetheart.
Okay.
And I haven't been with any other women for 16 years.
Okay, so I mean that's probably the best sex and the worst sex because besides his little fling, that's the only sex he's had. So I mean,
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what difference how much sex experience would play into it. Someone who was promiscuous.
Oh no, we were
married.
just talking about sex can be good or bad, and I'm like, well, if she's the only one he's had sex with, this is just a random aside, then it's probably good sex, the best sex he's ever had, and the worst sex if she's the only sex.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's kind of irrelevant to the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think it is, but it's even if it's the worst, that's just a joke. I do think that bad sex though can feel like no sex at all,
Right, or even worse potentially if, somebody is, like disgusted by you, just repulsed by you as you're trying to make love with them. That's probably even worse than no sex. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think being actively repulsed, yeah, for sure. So,
but I mean, not that he's given any indication that that's what's going on here.
Yeah, we kind of have to make some educated guesses about what his sex life would be like, except we know he's not having any, so the sex is not happening because the arguments are happening. The arguments are happening because he's becoming emotional and allowing her to set the emotional tone instead of being stoic, and him not allowing the emotions to work on his behalf, or not letting his emotions control him, but him control those emotions. So, I mean, he does play, obviously, in his infidelity, he is the main character. He's the one that's made this bad decision. Now, the question was, do you think this is grounds to leave a marriage? I think it could be.
Right, and it doesn't mean it has to be, though.
it doesn't have to be. And I think that most marriages could be salvaged if both people want them to be. Right? I think that no marriage, now, some people will say, well, I want to salvage it, she doesn't, or I want to salvage it, he doesn't.
And if we take his word for it,
then you can't do it. Like, marriages have to be a two-way street. Both people gotta want to salvage it. So maybe he does and she doesn't.
But I mean, he said it's not an option for either of them. So let's just take him for his word. I mean, I guess she doesn't know about the infidelity at this point, but let's just take him at his word that they both are committed to each other.
I mean, we can speculate why, but I think once she finds out, like you said, it's absolutely on the table. And regardless of what, there are very few religions out there where, leave a divorce after an infidelity wouldn't be like a just cause. Assuming they have some ties to religious thoughts there.
Yeah,
but at least as far as the law is concerned, there's no fault divorce now. So anybody can get divorced for any reason whatsoever. So for him to say that it's not an option for either of us is
a little naive. Yeah.
He doesn't quite realize that if it does come to divorce. And I don't know whether he should or shouldn't. Like, there's not enough information here to know.
And it depends on what she wants to do too.
Yeah, I mean, she'd be well within her rights to file for a divorce, but maybe she feels the same, like that he is. Maybe she's not interested in love. She just wants the stability of life that being in a relationship has. Maybe she just wants that. But she could. I mean, I don't know that she would. When he's planning on having another affair, so he's really not interested in
kind of reconciliation
at this point.
And so
there's really no contrition there yet.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of seeing a pattern a little bit with this guy where we're kind of seeing a lack of taking responsibility. So he said that she nagged a lot, and we're like, well, we don't really know if there's, if he's not really pulling his weight or if she's just kind of testing boundaries and stuff. But that, kind of hinted a little. And then he says he's going to see this woman again. And he's seeking validation online. So again, he's not, taking responsibility. And then we see him lashing out at the commenters. So, I mean, I'm kind of seeing a pattern here where he's not wanting to take responsibility in his life.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that just might be a little hint to me that maybe that's part of the problem in his marriage. I mean, I can't say for certain, but... Yeah,
and... for what it's worth on her end, we don't have her perspective on it as well.
Right, and I mean, she could be a horrible spouse on her end. I mean, who knows?
Could be. Yeah, we just don't know. We could speculate. But I'm going to go ahead and speculate that she's kind of calling it in at this point. Like, if she really is spending all day in the kitchen, and I'm just assuming she's not cooking and cleaning. Like,
okay.
I mean, I could be totally wrong there. We don't know. We're just speculating.
I mean, he didn't
he specifically complained about her spending all the time in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what's the alternative? Apparently, they make pretty good money. They could just eat out every night, right?
Yeah, and I mean, he could be a leader in his relationship and say, hey, babe, we're arguing a lot and stuff. Like, so that's kind of an indicator that you're stressed. Let's take the cooking off your plate. Let's, hire some sort of meal service or something, and
they got the cash for that. Yeah, and like I mentioned before, he could absolutely plan to spend more time with her. Go to where she is in the kitchen. You're not getting enough time with her? Well, what are you doing? Are you in your office playing computer games and not spending time with her?
Yeah, that's very attractive when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I'm just going to make an educated guess that she's not really putting work into the marriage either.
Right.
So do I think this marriage could be salvaged? Yeah,
maybe,
I think it could be. But they both got to want it. They both want to be putting in the effort to make that happen. It's not going to just happen by itself.
Yeah.
And the more he continues down this road of the affair and not disclosing the affair to his wife, and then for some reason, going online and seek validation from a bunch of women who are projecting their own insecurities onto him, just I don't know that calling him a POS really is going to help him. It doesn't sound like he's a terrible person. It just sounds like he's
maybe
unhappy marriage. But that's not to say that cheating on your spouse is a good thing. I'm not claiming that it is, but it doesn't make you a bad person or a good person. I think
there's just some areas for growth that I think that there's just some areas of growth, it would seem, from what has been written.
So probably about, oh my gosh, it's almost midnight.
Well, it's after hours,
It is after hours.
After hours, so.
Could he salvage it? Yes.
I mean, maybe. It depends how much he wants to do.
It doesn't sound like either of them are putting in the effort.
Yeah.
If his post would have ended with this marriage is really important to me. I don't know how to break the news to her. Some sort of desire to make it work, then I'd kind of have a lot of hope for him. I'm like, okay, he's made a mistake, but the way I'm kind of reading it now is he's not interested in doing that.
Right.
He's probably going to keep going until he gets caught.
Right. And he likes, it seems like he likes the stability of the marriage as well. He likes, having someone there to take care of his child and,
and cook for him, obviously.
And cook for him. So, I mean, there's, some stability there that he's like, you know what, I can just be lazy here in this relationship and go get some, loving somewhere else at night,
After hours.
After hours. You clean up the kitchen, babe. I'm going to... You got a bottle of wine for me?
Yeah, so, who knows what will happen, but if I could reach out and tell him one thing, I think where we started was you got to be introspective, dude. You got to really dig deep and decide if this marriage is something you want to salvage. And if it is, there's some hard work, that would have to go into admitting that you cheated on someone and facing up to the very real possibility that despite wanting to save it, you might lose it anyway.
Right.
That's a possibility that you have to accept when you play these games, you win these prizes,
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, even if she finds out about it and, opts for a divorce, if he doesn't introspect and work on himself and take responsibility and stop seeking validation and all these things, the internet cannot absolve him of his sins. If he doesn't start taking personal responsibility, then he's just going to carry all these same problems into another relationship, assuming he wants another relationship. Maybe he just wants to do the Tinder dating thing. I don't know.
Yeah. So let me ask you from a woman's perspective. And again, there's very little we know about her, so I'll just generalize the question. What do you think most women would experience if a man came to them and said, honey, I've got some bad news. I've been cheating. What do you think most women would react to that, or how would they react to that?
I think it's gonna be a whole tornado of different emotions. I think she is probably gonna be like he is. She is probably going to be projecting any blame and stuff. Obviously it's not, she didn't go out and sleep with somebody, but she hasn't been sleeping with him. She's been nagging him, so she's not a saint, presumably, in this relationship either. So I think most women are going to feel a lot of anger. They're going to project a lot of things. I think a lot of women are going to feel a lot of insecurity. I mean, that's going to be, huge, through the roof. On the one hand, it's anger and projecting, it's all your fault. And on the other hand, it's like, why wasn't I good enough? So I think.
Well, let me ask you this. For this guy, would it be better if he tried to fix the relationship first and then tell her that he cheated on her, or come right out and say, I cheated on you, but I want to fix the relationship? What do you think was better, like rip the Band-Aid off or pull it off slowly?
I mean, I think in his situation, because he's not, first of all, he has to decide if he even wants this relationship, or if he's, just holding on to a little security blanket.
Let's assume he does want to hang
Okay,
on to it.
assuming he wants to hang on to the relationship.
What would be the best way for him to start the reconciliation process?
I mean, I think he's got to start, first of all, you can't see this woman again. Okay, that's number one. Okay.
I mean, that's pretty obvious to me.
I think that's obvious to everybody but him. Everyone but him. If you want to stay married, you got to stop seeing this other woman. You can't. So you got to put the kebab on that first and foremost. And then in his situation, I don't know. I mean, I think there's advantages to both ways. I think that if you just tell her right away, then that really, he's not wanting to take responsibility, so this puts the ball in her court where she can take responsibility and say yay or nay right away. Yes, I want to work this out for you, or no, let's sign the papers. So that kind of tact would...
I think for most men, I can't speak for all men, but I think most men would want to do it rip the Band-Aid off, like come right out and say it. And, I think I think it really would depend on the tone. Like, if he came out in kind of a contrition and saying, hey, I've got bad news, I got to tell you, I'm really sorry. I did this thing, but I really do want to fix the marriage. That's why I'm telling you. I don't want you to find out from someone else or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I think most men would prefer the rip the Band-Aid off method, instead of trying to slowly fix the marriage and never, or never tell her at all. Mm-hmm. But I guess that would depend on the guy. But I think most men would want, if they really wanted to reconcile with their wife, they would come right out and expose their infidelity, and then try to, ask forgiveness and go from there. So.
Yeah, and I guess she has a right to make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and then she'd clearly be within her right. Obviously it's an expectation of marriage. The funny thing is, there's no legal, because marriages are no fault now, there's no legal, you don't have to prove legally that someone slept with someone else. You don't have to hire private investigators. You don't have to do all that stuff, unless you're not sure, I guess. But yeah, you just have to want a divorce, and that's all you have to do now. So there's no burden of proof on her. So that's probably a good thing, but I could see the opposite being true too, where maybe it has some unintended consequences of not being able to fault someone. But in this case, he's clearly at fault, and if she got a divorce, I don't think any normal person would fault her for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
I don't know. I guess that's. I think we hit upon the big things there.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Please, if you like this episode, please subscribe. We'd love to have you around. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Am I way off base here? Are we hitting close to home? Do we have some good ideas, some things you may not have thought about? Go ahead and let us know. Now, remember, we share our thoughts and opinions on stories, love, sex, relationships, but not your relationships. We don't know you. We don't know your stories. So take our advice with a grain of salt and do what's best for you. Until then, love each other, and we'll see you later. Bye.